The cleaner's daughter blew bubbles to comfort a little boy who'd been crying for 3 days. No one else could calm him. But what happened next left everyone speechless. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotional stories. Rose Johnson's hands were already raw from scrubbing toilets when she received the text. Her babysitter was sick again. She glanced at the gleaming marble bathroom of the Blackwood mansion, then at her watch. 2:30 p.m. School pickup was in 30 minutes, and her boss, Mr. Blackwood, had specifically warned her about bringing distractions to work. Third strike, she whispered to herself, remembering his cold eyes during yesterday's reprimand about her being 5 minutes late. One more mistake and she'd lose this job, the only one that paid enough to keep their tiny apartment. Rose quickly finished the bathroom and hurried downstairs, her heart pounding. The mansion was eerily quiet, except for Mrs. Henderson, the housekeeper, directing a catering team in the kitchen. "Mrs. Henderson, I have an emergency. My daughter's babysitter cancelled, and I need to pick her up from school." The older woman's face tightened. "Mr. Blackwood has been very clear about your probationary period, Rose. He's in his study reviewing household expenses." Her eyes conveyed what her words didn't. "Your position is on that list. Please, I'll bring her back here. She's very quiet. She can sit in the laundry room while I finish my shift." Mrs. Henderson sighed. "Be quick. And Rose, the boy hasn't stopped crying for 3 days. Try to work quietly on the second floor." Rose nodded, though she hadn't seen the Blackwood boy since starting here 4 weeks ago. All she knew was that the household walked on eggshells around him. 20 minutes later, Rose rushed into Westfield Elementary School, finding 7-year-old Lily waiting patiently on a bench, her worn backpack clutched to her chest. Her heart broke seeing her daughter sitting alone while other children left with parents or nannies. "I'm so sorry, baby," Rose said, kneeling to hug her. "It's okay, Mummy. Miss Perkins, let me help arrange the books." Lily's smile revealed the gap where her front tooth had fallen out last week, a tooth fairy visit that had cleaned out Rose's change purse. "Listen, sweetheart, I need to go back to work. You'll have to come with me and be extra quiet, okay? It's a very fancy house." Lily's eyes widened. "The castle house? You said I could see it someday." "This isn't a field trip, Lily. You need to sit quietly while I work. Bring your books." Back at the mansion, Rose snuck Lily through the service entrance. The laundry room was warm and hummed with the sound of running machines. She set Lily up in the corner with her backpack. "Stay here. I'll be finished in 3 hours, then we can go home for mac and cheese." "The kind with the shapes?" Lily asked hopefully. "Yes, the kind with the shapes." Rose kissed her forehead. "Remember, super quiet." Rose hurried upstairs with her cleaning cart, checking her schedule. 3 more bathrooms, 2 guest bedrooms and the hallway. She worked quickly, constantly checking her phone for texts from Lily, who knew to message if she needed anything. An hour passed without incident. Rose was polishing a hallway table when she heard it, a heartbreaking sob coming from behind a door she'd been told never to enter, the young master's room. The cries were desperate, the kind that come after tears have been flowing so long that breathing becomes difficult. As she hesitated, her phone buzzed. A text from Lily. "Mommy, I'm thirsty." Rose texted back, "Coming," and rushed downstairs. When she entered the laundry room, her stomach dropped. Lily was gone. "Lily?" she whispered urgently, checking behind machines. "Lily!" The laundry room door to the kitchen was ajar. Rose rushed through, scanning the enormous kitchen. No Lily. Panic rising, she hurried into the hallway, calling her daughter's name as loudly as she dared. A soft giggle from upstairs stopped her cold. Not just any giggle, Lily's. Rose took the stairs 2 at a time, following the sound to the forbidden door. It was cracked open. She peered inside and froze. The room was a child's paradise. A spacious blue and white bedroom with a ceiling painted like the sky, walls lined with toys that had never been removed from packages, and a train set that could circle the entire perimeter. In the center, on a plush carpet, sat two children. One was Lily, cross-legged in her faded jeans and favorite yellow shirt. The other was a small boy with red-rimmed eyes and tear-stained cheeks, staring in wonder as Lily dipped a bent straw into a cup of soapy water and blew. Iridescent bubbles floated between them. "See, this one has two bubbles inside each other. That's super special luck," Lily explained, as the boy cautiously reached toward one floating bubble. "It doesn't break." His voice was hoarse, probably from days of crying. "You have to touch it super gentle, like this." Lily demonstrated, letting a bubble land on her finger before it popped. "Your turn." The boy's trembling finger approached a bubble, but it popped before contact. Instead of frustration, his eyes widened with delight. "Again!" Rose stood transfixed. This must be Thomas Blackwood, the 6-year-old son she'd been instructed to avoid disturbing. The boy no one could console. "What is the meaning of this?" The deep voice behind her made Rose jump. She turned to find William Blackwood, his tall frame blocking the hallway, his expression thunderous. In his tailored suit, with silver-streaked dark hair and piercing blue eyes, he was intimidating even when not angry. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm so sorry. My babysitter cancelled, and my daughter—" "Daddy, look!" Thomas called out, his voice animated for what must have been the first time in days. "Bubbles don't break if you're gentle." William Blackwood's gaze shifted from Rose to the children. His stern expression faltered as he watched his son reach for another floating bubble. "I made them from the soap by the sink," Lily explained cheerfully. "I can show you how too, sir." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Thomas giggled as a bubble popped on his nose, and something shifted in William Blackwood's face. "Mrs. Henderson tells me you've been missing work to handle childcare issues," he said quietly to Rose. Rose straightened her shoulders. "Yes, sir. I'm a single mother. Sometimes arrangements fall through. I understand if you need to let me go." William watched his son, who was now attempting to blow bubbles himself with Lily's patient guidance. "That's the first time he's stopped crying since." He didn't finish the sentence. 3 days. Doctors, nannies, therapists. Nobody could reach him. Rose didn't know what to say. The mansion staff whispered about the tragedy, Mrs. Blackwood's car accident 3 months ago, but details were scarce. "Your shift ends at 6, William asked abruptly. "Yes, sir." "From now on, your daughter is welcome here after school. The east guest room can be her study area. I'll adjust your schedule and compensation accordingly." Rose blinked in disbelief. "Sir?" William Blackwood straightened his tie, composure returning. "Mrs. Henderson will discuss details. For now, let them play." He turned to leave, then paused. "Thank you, Miss Johnson." As he walked away, Rose watched the children through the doorway. Thomas was laughing now, chasing bubbles across his untouched bedroom. Simple soap bubbles had accomplished what wealth and specialists couldn't. They had brought joy back to a broken little boy. And maybe, just maybe, they had saved her job too. 3 weeks later, Rose pushed her cleaning cart past Thomas's room, smiling at the sounds of laughter within. What had begun as an emergency childcare solution had evolved into a daily ritual. After school, Lily would spend 2 hours with Thomas, while Rose completed her cleaning duties nearby. The transformation in the Blackwood household was remarkable. The oppressive silence had given way to the patter of small feet and occasional bursts of giggles. Even Mrs. Henderson seemed less rigid, often sneaking cookies to the children when she thought no one was looking. "Higher, Lily! Make it go higher!" Thomas called as Rose paused to peek through the doorway. The children were jumping on Thomas's bed, something Rose suspected Mr. Blackwood might not approve of, but the pure joy on the boy's face made her hesitate to intervene. Thomas was attempting to catch bubbles that Lily was sending skyward with an elaborate contraption they'd built from straws and cups. "If you jump when you blow, they go all the way to the ceiling," Lily demonstrated, her dark curls bouncing as she leaped. Rose smiled and continued down the hall to the linen closet. As she sorted fresh towels, she mentally calculated her new budget. The raise Mr. Blackwood had given her meant they could finally afford their own apartment with 2 bedrooms instead of the studio they'd been cramming into. Lily would have her own space for the first time. Lost in thought, she didn't notice William Blackwood approaching until he cleared his throat. "Miss Johnson." Rose straightened immediately. Despite his kindness regarding Lily, Mr. Blackwood remained formal and distant. "Yes, sir. I'd like a word about the children." His tone was unreadable. Rose's stomach tightened. Had he discovered them jumping on the furniture? "Of course, sir." William glanced toward his son's room. "Thomas has requested something that I'd like your input on. He wants Lily to attend Brighton Academy with him in the fall." Rose nearly dropped the stack of towels she was holding. Brighton Academy was the most prestigious private school in the city, with tuition that cost more than her annual salary. "Sir, I couldn't possibly—" "The school has a scholarship program," William continued as if she hadn't spoken. "Thomas hasn't shown interest in school since the accident. His teachers report he barely participates. But he's excited about having Lily there." Rose placed the towels on the shelf, buying time to gather her thoughts. "It's very generous, but Lily is settled at Westfield. Her friends are there, her teachers know her. Brighton Academy can provide opportunities Westfield cannot," William said, his businessman's tone emerging. "Advanced curriculum, smaller classes, connections that would serve her well into college." The implication that Westfield Elementary, the public school Rose herself had attended, was somehow inadequate stung. "Lily is thriving where she is. She's top of her class." A flicker of something, respect perhaps, crossed William's face. "All the more reason she deserves the best education available. The scholarship would cover everything: tuition, uniforms, materials. You wouldn't need to worry about any expenses." Rose leaned against the closet doorframe, suddenly feeling the weight of single parenthood pressing down on her shoulders. William Blackwood could offer Lily advantages that Rose could never provide on her own. Was it selfish to decline? "May I think about it?" she finally asked. William nodded. "Of course, but the application deadline is next Friday." As he turned to leave, Rose gathered her courage. "Mr. Blackwood, may I ask why you're doing this?" He paused, his back to her. For a long moment he said nothing, and Rose feared she'd overstepped. "My wife believed education was the greatest gift one could give a child," he said finally, his voice softer than Rose had ever heard it. "And your daughter brought my son back to me. I'm simply returning the favor." Before Rose could respond, a crash followed by laughter erupted from Thomas's room. William's shoulders tensed. "I should check on them," Rose said quickly. To her surprise, William turned toward his son's room instead of continuing down the hall. "I'll come with you." They found the children surrounded by pillows on the floor, having apparently constructed a fort that had collapsed. Thomas froze when he saw his father, his smile fading. "I'm sorry, Daddy. We were being careful." The formality in the 6-year-old's voice broke Rose's heart. She glanced at William, whose expression was unreadable. Lily, never intimidated, piped up. "We were making a cloud castle, Mr. Blackwood. Want to see our bubbles change colors when they float through the sunbeam?" An uncomfortable silence fell. Rose was about to suggest the children clean up when William Blackwood did something unexpected. He removed his suit jacket, carefully folded it over a chair, and lowered himself to the floor beside the children. "Show me," he said simply. Thomas's jaw dropped. Lily, delighted to have a new audience, immediately launched into a demonstration of their bubble-making technique, explaining how sunlight made rainbows appear in each bubble. William Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Technologies and one of the city's wealthiest men, sat cross-legged on his son's bedroom floor, watching soap bubbles with the concentration he usually reserved for business proposals. Rose backed quietly out of the room, giving them privacy. As she returned to her cart, she noticed a framed photograph on the hallway table she'd dusted 100 times before. It showed a beautiful woman with Thomas's eyes, laughing as she held a much younger Thomas on her lap. Margaret Blackwood, whose absence haunted these halls. For the first time, Rose wondered what kind of woman she had been, this person who had loved William Blackwood before he became the stern, distant man Rose knew. The woman whose death had left such a void that even a child's bubbles seemed miraculous in its wake. "And what exactly makes you qualified to make educational decisions for my nephew?" Victoria Blackwood's voice sliced through the breakfast room where Rose had been summoned. She stood ramrod straight near the window, her designer suit impeccable, her blonde hair pulled into a severe bun. The family resemblance to William was striking, but where his features had softened in recent weeks, Victoria's remained sharp and judgmental. Rose clutched her coffee mug, wishing she had declined Mrs. Henderson's invitation to join them before starting her shift. "I'm not making any decisions, Miss Blackwood. Your brother asked for my opinion about the scholarship." Victoria turned to William, who was buttering toast with mechanical precision. "Will, this is absurd. You're allowing the hired help to influence Thomas's education." William didn't look up. "Thomas wants Lily to attend Brighton with him. Rose is Lily's mother. It's a simple matter of courtesy to include her in the conversation." Courtesy. Victoria spat the word. 3 months ago, you wouldn't have allowed staff to eat in the breakfast room, let alone consult them on family matters. Rose set down her mug, preparing to excuse herself, when William finally looked up at his sister. 3 months ago, my son hadn't spoken a word in weeks. Now he's laughing again. Circumstances change, Victoria. Victoria's expression softened slightly. Of course, I'm happy Thomas is improving, but there are boundaries, Will. What would Margaret think? The mention of his late wife made William flinch. Don't. The tension in the room was suffocating. Rose stood. I should start my duties. Thank you for the coffee. You see, as she reached the door, William's voice stopped her. Rose, we haven't finished our discussion. The Brighton application will be submitted today, Victoria interrupted. I've already taken the liberty of completing Thomas's re-enrollment. The school expects him back after summer break. William's jaw tightened. And Lily? Victoria gave Rose a dismissive glance. Brighton Academy has standards, Will. Scholarships are highly competitive. I understand, Rose said quietly. Lily is happy at Westfield. It's a good school. But not good enough for a child with her potential, William said, surprising both women. He turned to Victoria. Call the headmaster. Tell him we're adding another student to the Blackwood Foundation scholarship this year. Victoria's eyes widened. The foundation scholarships are for underprivileged students with exceptional academic records who pass the entrance exam, not for... Lily Johnson has the highest reading scores in her grade and placed second in the regional mathematics competition, William stated flatly. Mrs. Henderson showed me the newspaper clipping Rose keeps in her wallet. Rose felt her cheeks warm. She hadn't known anyone had seen that treasured piece of paper, worn thin from frequent handling. Victoria looked from her brother to Rose, clearly reassessing. The entrance exam is rigorous. Many scholarship applicants don't pass. Lily will, Rose said with quiet confidence. Something like respect flickered across Victoria's face before she masked it. Very well, I'll make the call. She gathered her designer handbag and gave William a pointed look. The Memorial Garden Planning Committee meets at noon. Don't be late. After Victoria left, an uncomfortable silence fell. Rose had learned bits and pieces about the Blackwood family tragedy from staff whispers. Margaret Blackwood had died in a car accident 3 months ago. The family was planning a memorial garden at Brighton Academy, where she had served on the board. "Your sister cares about Thomas," Rose offered. William sighed. "Victoria means well." She and Margaret were close. The memorial garden sounds lovely. It was Margaret's project originally, a learning garden for the children to grow vegetables and flowers. A hint of warmth entered his voice. She believed children should know where food comes from, not just that it appears in grocery stores. Rose smiled. "Lily would love that. We tried growing tomatoes on our apartment windowsill last summer. They never got bigger than grapes, but she was so proud." For a moment, they shared a look of parental understanding that transcended their vastly different circumstances. "Mr. Blackwood." "Rose?" "Mrs.?" Henderson appeared in the doorway, her usually composed face flushed. "There's a situation with the children." Rose and William both stood immediately. "What's happened?" William demanded. "It's Thomas. He's locked himself in his mother's closet and refuses to come out." They rushed upstairs to the master suite, a part of the house Rose had never entered. The massive bedroom was immaculate, but felt unlived in, like a museum exhibit. A king-sized bed dominated one wall, its covers perfectly smooth. Across the room, a walk-in closet stood open, revealing rows of women's clothing, dresses, blouses, shoes, all preserved as if their owner might return any moment. Lily stood anxiously by the closet's interior door, which was now closed. "I'm sorry," she whispered when she saw Rose. "We were playing hide and seek and he went in there, but then he wouldn't come out." William approached the door. "Thomas, son, please open the door." A muffled sob was the only response. "Thomas, you're not in trouble." William tried again, jiggling the handle. "Please come out so we can talk." More crying. Rose knelt beside Lily. "What happened exactly?" "We were counting, and he said he knew the best hiding place. When I found him, he was holding a dress and smelling it. Then he started crying and locked the door." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart." Rose hugged her. "Sometimes people just need to remember someone they miss." William overheard and gave Rose an unreadable look before turning back to the door. "Thomas, I understand you miss Mommy. I miss her too, but hiding won't make it better." "She's gone forever," came the heartbroken wail from inside. "I just wanted to smell her perfume again, and now it's all used up." William closed his eyes, pain etching deep lines around his mouth. Rose's heart ached for both father and son, each drowning in grief, but unable to reach each other. "Thomas," Lily called softly, "remember how you said bubbles are like wishes? They float up to heaven?" A pause in the sobbing. "Yeah? Maybe we could send your mommy some special bubble wishes. My daddy is in heaven too, and sometimes I tell him things through the clouds." Rose felt her throat tighten. Lily rarely spoke about her father, who had died of cancer when she was just 3. "Your daddy is in heaven?" Thomas's voice was closer to the door now. "Uh-huh. My mommy says he watches over me like a guardian angel." William looked at Rose questioningly. She gave a small nod, confirming Lily's story. The lock clicked, and the closet door opened a crack. Thomas's tear-stained face appeared. "Do you think my mommy and your daddy are friends in heaven?" Lily considered this seriously. "Probably. My daddy was really nice. He could teach your mommy how to play the guitar." Thomas emerged fully, clutching a blue silk scarf. "Mommy wore this when she felt happy." He looked up at his father. "Can I keep it in my room?" William knelt, gently brushing tears from his son's cheeks. "Of course you can. And can we send bubble wishes to heaven?" "For Mommy?" William hesitated, then nodded. "I think that's a wonderful idea." As they all moved toward Thomas's room, Rose noticed a framed photograph on Margaret's nightstand. It showed a younger, carefree William with his arm around his beautiful wife, both laughing on what appeared to be a sailboat. Behind them, the water glittered with sunlight that formed perfect round reflections, like hundreds of tiny bubbles scattered across the sea. The bubble wishes became a weekly ritual. Every Friday afternoon, Rose would bring a special bubble solution she now made at home, a mixture of dish soap, water, and a touch of glycerin she'd learned about online to create stronger, longer-lasting bubbles. The children would gather in the expansive backyard, sometimes joined by William and occasionally even Victoria, though she pretended to be checking her phone while watching from a distance. They would blow bubbles into the sky, sending messages to heaven. "I'm telling Mommy about my swimming lesson," Thomas explained one warm June day as he carefully dipped a large wand into the solution. "I can swim all the way across the pool now without stopping." "That's wonderful, buddy," William said, his hand resting gently on his son's shoulder, a touch that would have seemed impossible 2 months ago. "I'm telling my daddy about Brighton," Lily said, spinning in circles as bubbles trailed from her wand. "I passed the test, so now I can go to school with Thomas." Rose watched from the garden bench, pride swelling in her chest. Lily had indeed passed the entrance exam with flying colours, impressing even Victoria, who had personally called to inform them of the results. "What are you telling heaven, Daddy?" Thomas asked, looking up at William. William hesitated, caught off guard by the question. I'm thanking your mother for watching over you." Thomas nodded solemnly, satisfied with the answer. But Rose noticed the shadow that crossed William's face, a flicker of something darker than grief. Later, as Rose collected the bubble supplies while the children chased each other around the garden, William approached her. "Lily's tuition paperwork is complete," he said. "The foundation will cover everything." "Thank you," Rose said sincerely. "I still can't believe she'll be attending Brighton." William nodded, watching the children play. "Margaret would have adored Lily. She always said children have wisdom adults forget." "They do," Rose agreed. The bubble wishes were Lily's idea, but they've helped Thomas process his grief in a way therapy couldn't. William's expression darkened. "Process grief. Is that what we're doing?" The bitterness in his tone surprised her. "I didn't mean to oversimplify. No, you're right. Everyone keeps telling me to process, to move forward, to heal." He nearly spat the last word, as if there's a checklist for recovering from having half your soul ripped away. Rose felt the conversation shifting into dangerous territory. This wasn't her employer discussing household matters. This was a broken man struggling with loss. "I lost my husband 4 years ago," she said quietly. "Cancer." It was quick, 3 months from diagnosis to the end. William looked at her with new awareness. "I didn't know." Lily was 3, too young to really understand. She knows him through photos and stories now. Rose twisted the simple band she still wore on her left hand. "People told me time would heal everything. They were wrong. Time just changes how the pain fits into your life." William was silent for a long moment. "How do you do it?" "Continue. Build a life around the empty space." "You don't fill the space," Rose said. "You build around it. You honor it. And eventually you find yourself living again, not just surviving." "Margaret was driving to pick up Thomas from school," William said suddenly, his voice hollow. "It was my day, but I had a meeting I couldn't miss. If I'd just stop." Rose's voice was firm enough that William looked startled. "That path leads nowhere good. Believe me, I've walked it. If only I'd noticed the symptoms sooner. If only I'd insisted on a second opinion. It changes nothing except to poison what life you have left." For a moment, William's carefully maintained facade crumbled, revealing raw anguish beneath. "I don't know how to be the father he needs without her." Before Rose could respond, the children came running over, breathless and laughing. "Daddy, Lily invented a new game," Thomas exclaimed. "It's called bubble tag. You have to catch someone before your bubble pops." William visibly gathered himself, pushing his grief back behind the wall he'd constructed. "That sounds challenging." "You should play too," Thomas urged, pulling his father's hand. "I have work to do, son." "Please, just one game." The naked hope in Thomas's eyes was impossible to refuse. William sighed and nodded. One game. As Rose watched father and son join Lily in the impromptu game, she noticed Victoria observing from the terrace, her expression unreadable. When their eyes met, Victoria motioned for Rose to join her. Rose approached warily. Despite the progress of recent weeks, Victoria still treated her with cool professionalism at best. "My brother seems to value your opinion," Victoria said without preamble. "I just listen," Rose replied. "He's carrying a lot." Victoria's gaze remained fixed on William, who was now laughing as a bubble popped against his forehead, marking him as it in the children's game. "I haven't heard him laugh since the funeral," Victoria said softly. Then, more sharply, "What exactly are your intentions here, Ms. Johnson?" Rose blinked. "Intentions? With my brother. He's vulnerable, wealthy, and clearly forming an attachment to you and your daughter." Heat rushed to Rose's face. "I'm his employee, Ms. Blackwood. I'm grateful for his kindness toward Lily, but there are no intentions." Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. "Really?" "A beautiful young widow with a charming daughter, conveniently solving my brother's parenting crisis while infiltrating every aspect of his life? You must admit it looks calculated." Rose's hands clenched at her sides. "I was hired to clean toilets, Miss Blackwood, not to trap a wealthy widower. If you're implying otherwise, perhaps I should tender my resignation." To her surprise, Victoria smiled, a small, tight expression that didn't reach her eyes. "That won't be necessary. I believe you." "You do?" "Margaret was my best friend since boarding school. I've been trying to help Will and Thomas move forward for months, with no success. Then you and your daughter appear with your magic bubbles, and suddenly there's progress." Victoria sighed. "I don't have to like it to recognize its value." Before Rose could respond, Mrs. Henderson appeared on the terrace. "Miss Blackwood, the Memorial Garden Committee members are arriving." Victoria nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson." She turned back to Rose. "We're finalizing plans for Margaret's garden at Brighton today. The dedication ceremony is next month, before school begins." She hesitated. "Perhaps you and Lily would attend." Margaret would have wanted Thomas to have friends there. The invitation, however reluctant, was clearly an olive branch. "We'd be honored," Rose said. As Victoria walked away, Rose turned back to watch the bubble game. William had shed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves, his normally perfect hair disheveled as he chased the children across the lawn. For a moment, she saw him not as the intimidating Mr. Blackwood, but simply as Thomas's father. A man finding his way back to joy, one bubble at a time. The invitation to the Blackwood Technologies annual summer gala arrived on a sweltering July morning. Rose stared at the cream-colored envelope Mrs. Henderson had handed her, embossed with the company logo in silver. "There must be some mistake," she said, trying to hand it back. Mrs. Henderson smiled knowingly. "No mistake. Mr. Blackwood was quite specific that you and Lily should attend. It's this Saturday evening." Rose opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a formal invitation to the gala at the Grand Meridian Hotel, along with a handwritten note on Blackwood Technologies' letterhead. "Rose, your presence would mean a great deal to Thomas. And to me. Car service will pick you up at 6 p.m. William. "But I have nothing to wear to something like this," Rose protested. "And Lily—" "Mr. Blackwood has arranged for that as well," Mrs. Henderson interrupted, clearly enjoying Rose's discomfort. "There's a personal shopper waiting for you at Nordstrom this afternoon. Your schedule has been cleared." Rose felt a flutter of panic. In the 2 months since the bubble incident, her relationship with William had evolved into something she couldn't quite define. Not quite friendship, but a mutual respect built on their shared concern for their children. They occasionally took coffee together while discussing Lily's transition to Brighton, and William had been increasingly present during the children's playtime. But a formal gala was something else entirely. That was stepping into his world, a world where Rose Johnson, former high school dropout with a GED and community college certificate, would be painfully out of place. "I don't think—" "Just go, dear," Mrs. Henderson said gently, patting Rose's hand with unexpected warmth. "Thomas specifically asked if you and Lily could attend. Apparently, he's receiving some sort of youth humanitarian award, and he wants his friend there. He's been practicing his speech all week. Poor little thing." Rose's resolve softened. "Well, when you put it that way." Saturday evening arrived too quickly. Rose stood before the mirror in her small apartment bedroom, hardly recognizing herself. The personal shopper had selected a simple but elegant midnight blue gown that made Rose's dark eyes shine and complemented her olive complexion. Her usually practical ponytail had been transformed into soft waves by the salon stylist who had been part of the Blackwood-sponsored makeover. A delicate silver necklace, borrowed from the stylist, completed the transformation. "Mommy, you look like a princess." Lily twirled into the room in her own party dress, a pale yellow confection with a satin sash that made her look like a miniature sunbeam. Her dark curls had been arranged with matching yellow ribbons that bounced when she moved. "And you look like sunshine," Rose replied, kneeling to adjust Lily's matching headband. "Remember what we talked about? This is a grown-up party, so we need to use our best manners." "I know, Mommy. Small sips, please, and thank you. No running, and don't talk about poop or farts, even if it's really funny." Lily recited seriously before breaking into giggles. Rose laughed. "That pretty much covers it. And remember, if you get tired or overwhelmed, tell you, and we can find a quiet place," Lily finished. "I won't embarrass Thomas, I promise." The sleek black car that arrived precisely at 6 p.m. felt like something from a fairy tale. As they pulled up to the Grand Meridian, Rose's stomach tightened at the sight of photographers and well-dressed guests entering the hotel. The building itself was imposing, a historic landmark with marble columns and crystal chandeliers visible through towering windows. "Why are there so many people?" Lily asked, pressing her face to the window. "And why are those people taking pictures?" "Mr. Blackwood's company is very important," Rose explained, smoothing her dress nervously. "Lots of people want to celebrate with them. Some of those people are from newspapers." The driver opened their door, and Rose stepped out, holding Lily's hand tightly. She felt painfully conspicuous as they walked the short distance to the entrance, conscious of curious glances and the click of cameras. Inside the grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in white linen and scented with elaborate floral arrangements. A small orchestra played softly in one corner, while waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The room buzzed with the confident voices of people accustomed to wealth and influence. Rose scanned the crowd nervously, recognizing no one. What was she doing here? Her hands felt clammy, and she resisted the urge to check if her price tag was still attached to her dress. "Rose! Lily!" Thomas's voice cut through her panic. The boy weaved through the crowd, resplendent in a child-sized tuxedo, his face alight with excitement. "You came!" Lily immediately hugged her friend, careful not to wrinkle either of their outfits. "You look so fancy, like a tiny businessman." "So do you. Come on, Daddy's waiting. He saved seats for you at our table." Thomas's eyes sparkled with happiness. "I have a surprise to tell you about later." Thomas grabbed Lily's hand and began pulling her through the crowd. Rose followed, acutely aware of curious glances from the other guests. Whispers followed in their wake. Who is that with Thomas? Is that William's new... So soon after Margaret? She kept her eyes forward, chin up, pretending not to hear. At the front of the ballroom, William stood conversing with a group of men in expensive suits. He looked impeccable in his tuxedo, every inch the successful CEO. When he spotted them approaching, he excused himself and moved to meet them. Rose. His eyes widened slightly as he took in her appearance, lingering a moment longer than strictly proper. You look stunning. Rose felt a blush creeping up her neck. Thank you. This is all very overwhelming. I've never been to anything like this before. You'll be fine, he assured her, placing a gentle hand on her lower back to guide her to their table. The brief contact sent an unexpected shiver up her spine. Victoria will join us shortly. She's handling some press inquiries about tonight's announcements. Their table was front and center, clearly designated for the Blackwood family and VIPs. Rose felt even more out of place as she recognized several faces from business magazines and local news. A senator nodded politely to William from 2 tables away. As they took their seats, William leaned closer, his voice low enough that only she could hear. I should warn you, people will talk. Ignore them. You're here as my guests, not as subjects of gossip. Anyone who matters knows the truth. Why did you invite us? Rose asked quietly. Really? William's eyes met hers, surprisingly vulnerable beneath his composed exterior. Because Thomas wanted you here, and because He paused, seeming to search for words. Because I find your company refreshing. You see me as a person, not as a balance sheet or a potential connection. That's rare in my world, Rose. Rarer than you might think. Before Rose could respond, Victoria arrived at the table, elegant in a crimson gown that complemented her blonde hair, which was swept up in an elaborate twist. Her eyes widened fractionally at the sight of Rose, but her social mask quickly returned. Rose. Lovely dress. Her tone suggested mild surprise, as if she hadn't expected Rose to clean up so well. She bent to kiss Thomas's cheek. You look very handsome, nephew. Thank you. The personal shopper you recommended has excellent taste, Rose replied, determined to hold her own. Lily and I are grateful for your thoughtfulness. Victoria's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. Indeed. Well, you certainly don't look out of place. She glanced around the ballroom. Unlike Senator Parker's new wife, 3rd time's not the charm when it comes to fashion sense, apparently. Rose followed Victoria's gaze to a woman in an overly elaborate gold dress, then felt guilty for participating in the gossip. She turned her attention to helping Lily with her napkin instead. Dinner was served, a multi-course affair featuring foods Rose could barely pronounce. Delicate portions of seared scallops were followed by a salad with ingredients Rose had never heard of, then a perfectly cooked filet mignon, and finally a chocolate dessert that looked more like art than food. She watched Lily carefully, proud when her daughter navigated the array of silverware with only minimal coaching from Thomas, who was clearly an old hand at formal dinners. You're supposed to use the small fork for this part, he whispered helpfully to Lily when the dessert arrived. And you eat from the outside in, remember? Your mom taught you well, Rose observed, touched by the boy's careful attention to manners. Thomas nodded solemnly. She said good manners mean you care about making other people comfortable. That's more important than knowing which fork to use. William, overhearing, gave his son a look of surprised pride that made Rose's heart ache. These small reminders of Margaret, her wisdom living on through her son, seemed to catch William off guard each time. After dessert, the awards portion of the evening began. Corporate achievements were recognized, charitable initiatives highlighted. Rose found herself genuinely impressed by Blackwood Technology's community involvement, scholarship programs, technology donations to underfunded schools, environmental initiatives that went well beyond the typical corporate window dressing. "We take our responsibility to the community seriously," Victoria explained quietly when she noticed Rose's interest. Margaret's influence, she wouldn't let William hide behind checkbook philanthropy, made him get personally involved. Finally, the Youth Humanitarian Award was announced. Thomas straightened in his chair as his name was called, his small face a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He adjusted his bow tie twice before standing. "This year's recipient has demonstrated exceptional compassion and initiative," the presenter explained, a distinguished older woman Rose recognized as the head of a children's hospital. Following personal tragedy, Thomas Blackwood established Bubbles of Hope, providing comfort kits to children experiencing grief or trauma. Each kit contains bubble solution, wands, and a guide to the bubble wishes technique Thomas developed with his friend Lily Johnson. These kits have already touched hundreds of lives in children's hospitals, grief counseling centers, and family courts across our city. Rose gasped softly, looking at William in confusion. This was the first she'd heard of such a program. He smiled, pride evident in his eyes. Thomas's idea. "He came to me after a nightmare, asking if we could help other kids who were sad like him. We've distributed 500 kits to hospitals and grief counseling centers so far. Lily's name is on every instruction booklet as co-creator." Thomas walked proudly to the stage, his small frame dwarfed by the podium. With a confidence that belied his 6 years, he accepted the award and spoke clearly into the microphone, though he had to stand on tiptoes to reach it properly. "When my mom died, I was really sad. I didn't want to talk or play or do anything." His voice wavered slightly, and Rose saw William tense beside her. "Then my friend Lily showed me how bubbles could carry our wishes to heaven. It helped me feel better. I want other kids to feel better too. Thank you for this award. I wish my mom could see it, but maybe a bubble can tell her about it tonight." The audience applauded warmly as Thomas returned to the table, clutching his award, a crystal star mounted on a wooden base. Lily hugged him immediately. "That was so good. You didn't even sound scared. I would have been super nervous with all those people looking." "I practiced a lot," Thomas confided, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Daddy helped me. I said it in front of the mirror 20 times yesterday." "Well, it was perfect," Lily assured him. "You're like a professional bubble expert now." Thomas beamed at the praise, then carefully set his award where both children could admire it between their dessert plates. As the formal program concluded and guests began mingling, Rose noticed William checking his watch repeatedly. His expression had shifted from relaxed to increasingly tense over the past 15 minutes. "Is everything okay?" she asked quietly, while the children were distracted, comparing Thomas's award to a science medal Lily had won at school. "Just some business that needs handling," he replied vaguely, his tone suddenly distant. "Would you excuse me for a few minutes? Victoria will keep you company. I shouldn't be long." As he disappeared into the crowd with unusual haste, Victoria slid into his vacant chair, signaling a waiter for a fresh glass of champagne. "Don't worry, he does this at every event. Workaholic tendencies. Mother always said he couldn't sit still for more than an hour without checking on something." Rose nodded, watching the children who were now taking turns holding the crystal award up to the light, marveling at how it cast tiny rainbows on the tablecloth. She couldn't shake the feeling that William's departure was about more than simple restlessness. "They're good for each other," Victoria observed, following Rose's gaze to the children. "Thomas hasn't been this animated around other children since before." "Yes, they are. Lily's always been outgoing, but she's blossomed with Thomas. Having a true friend means everything at that age," Victoria swirled her champagne thoughtfully, her perfectly manicured nails tapping lightly against the crystal. "You know, Margaret would have liked you." Rose looked at her in surprise, nearly choking on her water. "Really?" She valued authenticity above all else. It's why she and Will worked, despite their different backgrounds. She was a public school art teacher when they met. Did you know that? Not exactly the typical match for an up-and-coming tech executive from a wealthy family. Rose shook her head. The staff rarely discussed Mrs. Blackwood's past, treating it as something sacred and off-limits. "I had no idea. That explains her interest in the learning garden. Teaching at-risk teens in the city, Will was doing some corporate philanthropy tour, visited her classroom and was completely smitten." Victoria smiled at the memory, her usually sharp features softening. She refused to date him until he volunteered at the school for a month. Said she wouldn't be another CEO's charity project or a trophy to parade around at events like this. Rose tried to imagine William Blackwood volunteering in an underfunded public school, surrounded by teenagers who couldn't care less about his net worth or business acumen. It was difficult to reconcile with the formal, sometimes aloof man she knew. What happened? He showed up every Tuesday and Thursday for 5 weeks, teaching business skills to her students. By the end, 2 of them had secured scholarships to business school, and Margaret had agreed to dinner. Victoria's expression softened further. She never lost that groundedness. Even after they married, she insisted on keeping her teaching job, only stopped when Thomas was born, and even then she remained on the board of several educational charities. Rose was absorbing this new information, re-evaluating her understanding of both William and his late wife, when a commotion near the entrance caught her attention. William had returned, but he wasn't alone. A uniformed police officer accompanied him, their expressions grave as they approached the table. William's face was ashen, his earlier composure completely gone. Victoria stood immediately, champagne forgotten. "Will? What's happening?" Her voice held a note of alarm that made several nearby guests turn to look. William's hands trembled slightly as he gripped the back of his chair. "They've reopened the investigation into Margaret's accident. They have questions about the brake lines." Victoria gasped, one hand flying to her throat. "What are you saying? Here, now. This is beyond inappropriate." The officer stepped forward, his expression professionally neutral despite the tension. "Ma'am, we have evidence suggesting the vehicle's brake failure wasn't accidental. I'm afraid we need Mr. Blackwood to come with us to answer some questions." Rose instinctively moved to shield the children, who were thankfully absorbed in their own conversation a few feet away. She felt as though the room were tilting, the elegant surroundings suddenly sinister in their opulence. "This is absurd," Victoria hissed, her voice low but intense. "My brother has suffered enough without these baseless accusations. Do you have any idea what this will do to Thomas if he sees his father being questioned like a criminal?" "It's all right, Victoria," William said, his voice eerily calm, despite the slight tremor in his hands. "I have nothing to hide." He turned to Rose, his eyes seeking hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Would you take the children home? Mrs. Henderson is waiting. I'll explain everything later. Please." Before Rose could respond, Thomas noticed the police officer. His smile faded instantly, replaced by confusion and alarm. "Daddy, what's happening? Why is there a police officer?" William knelt before his son, speaking softly but firmly. "Everything's fine, buddy. This officer needs my help with something important about Mommy. Rose is going to take you and Lily home, and I'll be there soon to tuck you in. We'll read an extra chapter tonight, okay?" Thomas looked unconvinced but nodded bravely, his small shoulders squaring with effort. "Is it about Mommy's car accident?" William hesitated, clearly torn between honesty and protection. "Yes, it is. They're trying to understand exactly what happened. That's a good thing, right? To know the whole truth." Thomas nodded solemnly. Mommy always said the truth is important, even when it's hard. William's composure faltered for a moment, his eyes glistening. She was right, as always. Now be good for Rose and Lily, okay? I won't be long. As William stood to leave with the officer, his eyes met Rose's. For a split second, she saw something there that sent a chill down her spine. Not guilt or fear, but a deep, unfathomable sadness that went beyond the grief she'd witnessed before. It was the look of a man who had glimpsed an abyss and wasn't sure he could avoid falling in. "Trust me," he whispered as he passed her, his voice barely audible. "Please." Rose gathered the confused children, her mind racing. The perfect evening had shattered into something unrecognizable, leaving her with more questions than answers. Victoria was already on her phone, presumably calling their attorney, her face tight with controlled fury. "Come on, kids," Rose said with forced cheerfulness. "Let's head back to the house. Maybe we can watch a movie before bedtime." As she guided them through the now whispering crowd, she caught fragments of speculation already spreading. Always thought it was strange how quickly he returned to work. Heard there was a massive insurance policy. The sister seems rather protective, doesn't she? What had really happened to Margaret Blackwood, and why did Rose have the sinking feeling that the fragile happiness they'd built over the past 2 months was about to collapse like a bubble touched too roughly? "Dad got home super late," Thomas whispered to Lily as they huddled on the window seat in the mansion's library 3 days later. "And he was talking to Aunt Victoria for a long time in his study. They were yelling. I could hear them even with my door closed and my special noise machine turned on." Rose pretended to dust the bookshelves while keeping an ear on the children's conversation. It had been 3 days since the gala, and William had barely spoken to anyone since returning from police questioning in the early hours of Sunday morning. He moved through the house like a ghost, distracted and withdrawn. Rose had stayed overnight with the children at Mrs. Henderson's insistence, sleeping in the guest room adjacent to Thomas's room to comfort him when he woke from nightmares. "Is your dad in trouble?" Lily asked. Her voice hushed. She had been unusually quiet since the gala, sensing the tension that had descended over the household like a heavy fog. Thomas shrugged, his small shoulders tense beneath his t-shirt. "I don't know. Aunt Victoria says it's just a mistake and grown-ups will fix it. But this morning I heard Mrs. Henderson talking to the gardener about false accusations and circumstantial evidence. I looked those up in my dictionary." Rose marveled at the boy's resourcefulness even as her heart ached for him. At 6 years old, he shouldn't know terms like circumstantial evidence, let alone need to look them up to understand what was happening to his father. Rose moved closer to the children, abandoning the pretense of dusting. "How about we go make some bubbles in the garden? It's a beautiful day, and I have a new recipe that makes super strong bubbles. They can last for almost a minute if there's no wind." The children nodded eagerly, always ready for their favorite activity. Thomas especially seemed relieved at the suggestion, as if escaping the oppressive atmosphere of the house was exactly what he needed. As they headed outside, Rose noticed Victoria watching from the study doorway, her expression troubled, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she hadn't slept much either. "A word, Rose," Victoria called, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. Rose directed the children to the garden, now a familiar routine between them. "I'll be right there. Get the bubble solution from the kitchen." Mrs. Henderson put it in the blue container in the refrigerator to keep it cold. It works better that way. When the children were gone, Victoria motioned Rose into the study and closed the door with a soft click. The room was masculine and formal, with leather furniture and walls lined with books in matched bindings. The scent of expensive cologne and paper lingered in the air. William sat behind an imposing desk, looking haggard and unshaven. a stark contrast to his usual impeccable appearance. Papers were scattered across the surface, legal documents by the look of them. "Rose!" He acknowledged her with a nod, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you for staying with Thomas. It's been complicated. He had nightmares again last night." "He's worried about you," Rose said simply. "Children pick up on more than we realize." He was looking up legal terms in the dictionary this morning. William winced, running a hand through his disheveled hair. God, I should have talked to him more. I just didn't know what to say that wouldn't terrify him further. "Is there anything I can do?" Rose asked, concern overriding her usual professional distance. "For Thomas? Or—" She hesitated, then added, "or for you?" Victoria and William exchanged looks, a silent communication between siblings that spoke of shared history and mutual understanding. "Actually, yes," William said, straightening slightly. "That's why we asked you to join us." Rose took a seat in one of the leather chairs, noting the legal documents spread across the desk. Some bore the letterhead of Williams and Klein, which she recognized as one of the city's most prestigious law firms. "What's happening? Is there something I should know to help Thomas?" William rubbed his temples, exhaustion evident in every line of his face. "The police found evidence that Margaret's brake lines were tampered with. They're treating her death as a homicide, not an accident." Rose gasped, the implications hitting her with physical force. "That's terrible. Do they have any suspects?" "Surely they don't think—" She stopped, suddenly understanding the police officer's presence at the gala, the whispers, William's distress. The heavy silence that followed answered her question before Victoria spoke, her voice brittle with suppressed anger. "They're focusing on Will because of the life insurance policy. $10 million. As if he needs the money. It's absurd. Will is worth hundreds of millions. The policy was Margaret's idea in the first place." "Which I never collected," William added bitterly, pushing a document toward Rose. "It was a donation acknowledgement from Mercy Children's Hospital for $10 million, dated just weeks after Margaret's death. I donated the entire amount to the children's hospital Margaret volunteered at. I couldn't bear to profit from her death." "And you think I can help somehow?" Rose asked, confused about her role in this family tragedy that had begun long before she entered their lives. William leaned forward, his blue eyes intent despite the fatigue shadowing them. "The police are building a timeline of Margaret's last day. I was in meetings, which gives me an alibi for most of the day, but there's a 2-hour window in the afternoon where I can't prove my whereabouts. I was driving between our downtown office and a satellite campus, alone. I still don't understand." "We need character witnesses," Victoria interrupted, pacing behind William's chair like a caged tigress. "People who can testify to Will's relationship with Thomas, his state of mind in recent months. You've been in this house daily since shortly after Margaret's death. You've seen Will and Thomas together more than almost anyone. You've witnessed his grief, his struggle, his efforts to heal." Rose looked between them, realization dawning. "You want me to testify for you? To tell the police what I've seen?" "Only if you feel comfortable," William said quickly, leaning back slightly as if to distance himself from any perception of pressure. "Only if you believe in my innocence. I would never ask you to say anything you don't believe is true." The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Did she? Rose had only known William Blackwood for a few months. He had been kind to her and Lily, generous beyond expectation. But she had also seen his dark moods, the depths of his grief, the occasional flashes of anger. Could she swear with certainty that this man was incapable of violence? "I believe you loved your wife," she said finally, choosing her words with care. "And I know you love Thomas more than anything in this world. That's what I can testify to, truthfully." Relief flooded William's face, some of the tension visibly leaving his shoulders. "Thank you, that means more than you know." Or, Victoria handed Rose a business card, her perfectly manicured nails briefly brushing Rose's fingers. "This is Will's attorney. He may contact you for a statement, if you're comfortable with it." Rose nodded, tucking the card into her pocket. "The children are waiting. Is there anything you want me to tell Thomas?" "Oh, just that everything will be fine," William said, his voice strained despite his attempt at confidence. "Keep things normal for him. God knows there's been little enough normality in his life lately." As Rose turned to leave, William spoke again. "Rose, there's something else you should know. Something the police told me that I'm still trying to process." She paused at the door, one hand on the ornate brass handle. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the study windows caught the dust motes in the air, making them dance like tiny golden stars between them. "The police think Margaret knew her killer, that she let them near her car willingly." His eyes were haunted, the blue darkened to something closer to midnight. "They found something in her personal effects, a journal. She wrote that she was afraid, but she never told me why. She was protecting me from something, but I don't know what." Rose's stomach tightened, a chill running through her despite the warm day. "Mr. Blackwood—" "William," he corrected softly, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "After all this, I think we're past formalities, don't you?" "William," she amended, the name feeling strangely intimate. "Whatever happened, Thomas needs you. We'll get through this." "Geez," she hesitated, then added with quiet certainty, "all of us together." The plural pronoun slipped out unintentionally, but neither William nor Victoria commented on it. Instead, William nodded gratefully, a flicker of something warmer momentarily displacing the worry in his eyes. Outside, Rose found the children blowing bubbles near the rose garden, Margaret's favourite spot, according to Mrs. Henderson. The elderly housekeeper had mentioned once that Margaret spent hours here, often talking to the flowers as she tended them. Thomas had been visiting it more frequently since the gala, sometimes talking softly to the roses as if his mother might hear him through them. Today the roses were in full bloom, their heady perfume filling the warm summer air. "Look, Mummy!" Lily called excitedly, running toward Rose with something in her hands. "We made a bubble snake with a sock and a bottle. Thomas learned it at school before he stopped going. It makes 1,000,000 tiny bubbles all at once." Rose forced a smile, pushing aside her concerns to focus on the children. "That's amazing. How does it work?" she asked, examining the contraption. An empty plastic bottle with the bottom cut off, covered with a sock secured by a rubber band and dipped in bubble solution. As Thomas eagerly demonstrated their invention, blowing through the bottle's mouth to create a foamy snake of bubbles that wriggled through the air, Rose noticed a police car pulling into the driveway. Her heart sank as 2 officers emerged and approached the front door. One she recognized from the gala. The other was a stern-looking woman in a dark suit who was clearly a detective rather than a patrol officer. Moments later, Mrs. Henderson appeared on the terrace, her usually composed face flushed with agitation. "Rose, Mr. Blackwood would like the children to come inside for lunch now." Her voice was steady, but her eyes darted nervously toward the driveway where the officers were now speaking with the security guard at the gate. The tightness in Mrs. Henderson's voice told Rose everything she needed to know. William was being questioned again, and he wanted the children away from the spectacle, protected from seeing their father treated like a suspect. "Race you to the kitchen," Rose called to the children, creating a diversion that worked instantly. As they ran ahead, giggling and shouting about who would reach the door first, she exchanged a worried glance with Mrs. Henderson. "It's getting worse," the housekeeper murmured, her lined face creased with additional worry. They found something in Mrs. Blackwood's car, hidden in the spare tire compartment, a USB drive with some kind of files from Blackwood Technologies. The police brought it with them this time. Rose's mind raced, connecting this new information with what William had shared. What kind of files? I don't know exactly, but Miss Victoria was white as a sheet when she saw it. I overheard her on the phone afterward, something about Project Lazarus and clinical trials that weren't approved. Miss Henderson shook her head, her grey curls bouncing slightly. This family has suffered enough. Margaret's death nearly destroyed them. Now this. It's like watching a Greek tragedy unfold. The children are the only bright spot in all this darkness. Mrs. Henderson, Mommy, come on! Lily called impatiently from the doorway, her sock bottle bubble maker still clutched in one hand. Thomas says we can have ice cream after lunch if we eat all our vegetables. Coming, sweetheart, Rose replied, summoning a bright smile she didn't feel. As she followed the housekeeper inside, she couldn't help glancing back at the rose garden. For a moment, she could almost picture Margaret there, a woman she'd never met, but whose presence still filled this house, whose secrets might now be destroying the family she'd left behind. The sun broke through a cloud, illuminating a single perfect rose, its petals the same deep red as the dress Victoria had worn to the gala. Beside it, dozens of iridescent bubbles floated gently on the breeze, carrying children's wishes heavenward. Rose wondered what Margaret would wish for if she could send a bubble of her own: justice, protection for her son, or perhaps simply peace for the husband who still grieved her so deeply. They had just settled the children with sandwiches and carrot sticks when raised voices echoed from the foyer. Rose recognized William's usually controlled tone, now sharp with anger, and something that might have been fear. This is harassment. My wife's death was a tragedy, not a crime I committed. You're looking in entirely the wrong direction, and you know it. Mrs. Henderson quickly turned on music to distract the children, but Thomas's face had already crumpled with worry. He set down his sandwich, appetite visibly vanishing as he strained to hear his father's voice.